Welcome again, everyone. This is Sarah Ahmed from Studio by TCS, and welcome to our live session again. Juma Mubarak to everyone out there. आज लेबर डे भी है, so I hope आप लोग सब घर पे थे and कोई काम नहीं कर रहे थे because लेबर डे पे कोई काम नहीं करना चाहिए. Today we have someone very interesting with us. हमारे पास आज इस लाइव सेशन में रिजवान बेग आएंगे, who is one of Pakistan's top fashion designers, and not only is he one of the top fashion designers, he also got a chance to make a dress for Lady Diana, and he also met her. So Rizwan Beyg is on live with us. So waiting for Rizwan Beyg. Hi, Assalamualaikum Rizwan. How are you?
Walaikum salam. I'm very well, Sahar. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I know that you are having some technical difficulties, but that happens with you if this is your first time you're doing it.
Yes, my first time.
Yeah, I'm very excited that your first time is with Studio by TCS. And I was just telling viewers as well that, you know, your collection now is on Studio by TCS. If they want to buy your outfit anywhere in the world, they can just go on to studiobytcs.com. So anyways, Rizwan, tell me, how's everything? How's social distancing and quarantine coming along? Are you actually doing that as well?
Yeah, I think it's kind of enforced by most people, by most governments. And if you're sensible and you have, a sense of, safety, and you want to be cautious about health issues, then it's critical that you actually follow the guidelines set out by the WHO and by your local governments. And I think, the most responsibility is that you don't, take it further. You don't carry it to your families. You don't carry it to elderly people. And hopefully people are actually, staying, within the confines of their homes and actually continuing with the social distancing. One hopes that, the situation gets better. And I'm hopeful that they hopefully will find, some kind of a vaccine for this.
I hope so too, but numbers are a bit scary. I think Pakistan is just peaking. So let's see, fingers crossed that, we somehow flatten the curve soon as well.
I think this is a historic moment in the history of mankind. I think, this is one of those few occasions that nobody expected ever to see. It's kind of forced us to address a lot of things like climate change, like, your own safety, about, the polar ice caps melting, about viruses being set loose in the world. Also, it's kind of forced us to assess our own families, our interaction with work, our interaction with people. So I think it's a landmark, in terms of history. When you look back at this moment, a lot of people are going to say that this is going to be a turning point in a lot of stuff that we've been taking for granted for a long time.
Absolutely. So Rizwan, just moving away from Corona for a while, I just, I just wanted to tell people as well that I think a lot of people don't know this maybe, but you've been doing couture for a long time, but now I see you kind of dabbling into luxury press as well. So what was that move? I mean, how come you decided to make that move into sort of ready to wear luxury pret and, not just focus on couture?
Well, I think, we're among the pioneers of the fashion movement in Pakistan. I mean, when I started in 1989, 1990, this was towards the end of 89, there was no real concept of designer wear. There was no real concept of couture. There was no real concept of bespoke. You had the high street tailor. You had, brands like TJ's. You had different people who worked within the confines of their own homes. There was the whole tailor culture. So all of that was going on. And then, of course, there was a whole bunch of people who came back from the West, who had actually studied, who had actually done fashion. And I don't know if many people know this, but I'm actually an architect by training. So I have a degree in architecture. And it kind of set the foundations for actually working with, by going to a liberal arts college, it kind of gives you a very strong aesthetic and, the kind of associated different art forms that you go through in a liberal arts college. You're exposed to painting and sculpture and pottery and ceramics and a lot of textile as well. So after graduating as an architect, then of course, I got into interior design and I worked as an interior designer. And that gave me a lot of, experience with working with textiles, home furnishings, drapery. So you get a feel for that. And, when we started and we actually set this movement about starting a design, designer wear in Pakistan. At that point, of course, there was no concept of design wear. So there was a whole bunch of us that had recently come back, and we were all kind of working on different fields, and there were makeup artists, and there were designers, and there were textile people, and so it kind of got together this whole new brat pack, and it set the stage for what is now the fashion industry. So people like Faiza Sami, Mahin Khan, Shamail, myself, Sana Safinaz, we are all the people, Amir Adnan in menswear. We were the people, I think, who broke a lot of ground, who took a lot of risks, who really wanted to, kind of make a difference in this country. And fortunately, those were the times when we started with the couture movement, because the whole idea was to start with bespoke, to kind of cater to, a higher aesthetic, for want of a better word. And also, this was the time, if you look at it globally, this is when the super, model and the celebrity designer was also happening in the West. I mean, people like, the famous fashion houses, Christian Lacroix, and the same thing was happening across the border when you look at India as well. You had the Tarun Talianis and the Rohit Bals also. So it was almost like a renaissance, like a global renaissance for fashion. So having started and established ourselves for the longest time and kind of working towards, perfecting the craft, perfecting, the embroidery, getting involved in all the intricacies of old, family traditions and old, stitches and, the traditions of our history and our heritage. It kind of, took up a lot of time, because what we were doing, we were perfecting the craft. And then, of course, times have changed. So, now there's a lot more globalization. There's a lot, the internet, of course, changed everything, and then, of course, e-commerce. So e-commerce, I think, was largely responsible. And then I think it came down to a basic inquiry from a lot of people who, have been friends of mine, who've actually, I've known for many, many years, my old clients, who said, bespoke is beautiful, but it's very, very pricey. So why can't we do, a lesser line with less embroideries using the same kind of aesthetic and kind of translate it into a more wearable garment? Not everything should be occasion wear, because couture generally kind of by definition, it actually means occasion wear. It's something that you wear to, a high price, to a ball or to a dinner or even wedding wear for that matter. But, a lot of people kind of raise this question, okay, why can't we do stuff that we can wear on a day-to-day basis? And having said that, I was the first designer to actually deal with lawn, because, it's the ubiquitous outfit that's worn in the subcontinent because of our weather and because of the summer. So having worked with lawn, it seemed that, yes, it was possible. And then, of course, given inflation, global inflation, and the way the dollar's, kind of falling, and the, the Pakistani rupee devaluing, it made a lot of sense to start creating a product line that used the same aesthetics and the same standards as couture, but actually making it more affordable and something that a lot more people had access to globally.
So there was a comment, Sarah, who said that your clothes are lovely, but they're too expensive. So Sarah, I just want to tell you that Rizwan Beyg now also has an affordable line that you can check out on Studio by TCS, or you can check it out on Rizwan Beyg's website as well. And you'll find luxury pred outfits, which are really affordable as well. And you get that Rizwan Beyg signature look. And I love that, Rizwan, because, couture a lot of the times, it becomes sometimes a little limiting, So I feel like with luxury pred, you have more accessibility to wear to different places as well. And, it doesn't cause a big dent in your pocket as well. So it's a nice thing to have, though.
Well, the thing is, we're also kind of looking at other stuff, because given the fact that, globally, there's going to be a massive recession after this whole COVID thing as well. I mean, all the economists have predicted it, and it's, very obvious that the buying power of a lot of people is going to be restricted. We're also looking into developing a whole range of prints, even more affordable than our luxury brand. So something that's, ready to wear, that you can actually buy off the peg and, pick up at reasonable prices, very, very affordable. When I say reasonable, I mean comparable to a lot of high street brands. But that's going to be a line of prints. But again, using a different aesthetic, using an aesthetic that has been honed. This is my 30 years in fashion. It's 3 decades of Rizwan Beyg. And fortunately, we've also kind of explored working with the rural sector, which is another story. And I'd like to talk about that as well, because that's, today's Labor Day, and, a lot of the designers owe a lot to the labor that has been working for us, to the people who've actually, the tailors, the embroiderers, the staff that work for us, the people whose faces you never see, but who are the backbone of any organization. And I would like to pay homage to that today because it's Labor Day, and I would like to kind of honor all the staff that has been working for me for the past 30 years, the people who are working for me, the people who have worked for me in the past, and the people who will hopefully come and work for me in the future. But the kind of aim for the Rizwan Beyg label is now to kind of become, to have a clear division between the heavy, elaborate, classic, heritage pieces, the heirloom pieces that we call under a label of heirloom, which is a lot of the revivals of the old stitches from the Mughal tankas that you see. And then, of course, working towards a very affordable printed line of kurtis and shirts and tops and trousers and jeans. So it's going to be, the Rizwan Beyg hopes to become a complete shopping experience for the online shopper.
Yeah. So we have a comment from being, I think, Naila, and she's saying she's from the UK and she loves your clothes and she would love, and she's saying beautiful is an understatement and would love for someone like Rizwan Beyg to be her mentor. So Rizwan, this is how much people love you all around the world as well.
Well, thank you so much. I'm very flattered, I'm very honored, and I'm very humbled because at the end of the day, it's the ordinary person who actually wears our stuff that makes us who we are, makes us appreciated, and makes us feel that it's all worth our while.
Absolutely. So Rizwan, even coming about prints and, like talking about COVID, I just want to go back to that now. Things are changing a lot, and obviously like even I feel Eid this time will be on Zoom, or WhatsApp video. I still feel sometimes that, I think there's a debate going on whether or not to buy new clothes or whether to celebrate Eid. I think that there should be something that we need to be happy, and I feel like, if you dress up, you're donating at the same time, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be buying anything either, because when you buy, you're actually providing work for other people, like, the tailors out there, your karigars, all of those people as well. What is your opinion about this?
Okay, so for the past, 9-10 years, I've been involved with the rural sector of Pakistan. We work with impoverished women. We work with small communities spread out across villages. We have a basic program called Bunyad, which means foundation. And it's the foundation for everything, the foundation for life. And I've been working as a consultant for a lot of international donor agencies. I worked with the USAID. I worked with AHAN, which is a locally started program on, expertise in villages. I've worked with the World Bank. I've worked with a lot of different people as a consultant. And as a consultant, it has taken me into the rural sector where they have come in. A lot of these donor agencies have come in trying to provide training to a lot of these rural women and to try and raise the standard. So about 9 to 10 years ago, we actually went into the rural sector and we actually chose Southern Punjab because after the mapping of Pakistan, we found out that the most amount of skilled women were actually based in Southern Punjab, in the Bhavalpur region. So having gone there, we then looked at it and it was really, really a life-changing moment for me because the kind of lives those women lived and the kind of exploitation that they were subjected to was incomprehensible. So a lot of our initial work over the past 7-8 years has been gone into training these women, working with small communities. And it's very basic. If you can collect 20 women who have a particular skill set, and if you can follow our guidelines, we will send and train those women, and those communities will then start to produce for our label in particular. Initially, we had thought that we would connect those communities with a lot of brands, but it proved to be a very, very difficult task because standardization within the rural communities and within hand embroidery is unheard of. So we actually rewrote the handbook on how to work with social enterprise. And this is not a charity. This is not something we do charitable work. It is basically social enterprise. You work for us, we pay you the right wage, and you earn a living to what you produce honorably and with respect and with regard. So this is something that we started.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. I'm saying this is such an amazing initiative, Rizwan, and I don't feel that this has been discussed enough anywhere.
Well, see, the thing is, the most important thing, of course, was not to talk about it like most other NGOs do. There's a lot of talk and there's very little action. So for the past 7-8 years, and for the past 3 years in particular, we've actually worked towards grooming these women to produce put your level emojis. And I am so proud of these women. I cannot begin to tell you, they're like an extended family. We started with 25 women. We now have 150 women that work for us in different communities all over southern Punjab, in small, small villages. They're not even, this is not urban based. So it's not in a city. So this is
So,
basically
Rizwan,
trying to
how
tie
can
with what you said.
one help you though? Like, how do we help you as well? How can we, how do we find out more? Like Naila is also asking, how do we find out more about this initiative? But beyond that, how does one also help you with this initiative?
Well, see, the thing is, it's all on our webpage. You need to go to www.rizwanbegdesign.com and you need to look it up. There's a separate section on Bunyad. It's kind of a complete history of how we worked on it, what we've been doing with the women over there, and how it functions. And for me, the biggest, my huge pride, I have this great sense of pride in these women, because today 98% of what is produced for Rizwan Beyg is done by these women. So to go back to what you talked about, celebrating, Eid, I think the advantage that our label has over a lot of labels is when you do buy from Rizwan Beyg, you are empowering your own gender. You are empowering women in the rural sector. So the sense of guilt really can be dealt with by saying that we are providing for lesser human beings, for people who don't have the access to that kind of an income. And we're doing it with honor, and we're doing it, with respect. So we are buying something. This is not a charity. This is not a handout to these women. You are buying from a label, and that label is actually 98% of what that label does is actually being provided by these rural women. So I think that's one good way of looking at it. And I think also, and this is something that I've always kind of, debated and talked about, that people are willing to pay millions of rupees or hundreds of, dollars for brands. They want to pay for a brand, not for the product.
Yeah.
So people will pay for a brand with the value of the brand, but they won't pay for a hand embroidered kurta, which is in the same price range. And I've always found that amazing, because it shows a certain lack of sensitivity for a lot of consumers. And at the end of the day, whatever you say, it really, really comes down to the consumer, because the consumer is who is brand loyal, actually builds a brand, and actually takes a brand to its utmost, to any heights that a brand can possibly go. It's because of the consumer. It's because of people like you. It's because of people who actually buy the product, who actually believe in the brand. So I think that's very important, that you actually work with brands. And now, of course, globally, there's this huge talk about ethical practice. There are big, big brands like, H&M, of course, was taken to court because of the building collapse in Bangladesh, and they lost the case. So globally also, there's a lot of provenance. People want to know where their things are coming from. It's like food. People want to know where the food is coming from, whether it's organically grown, whether Monsanto is involved, whether it's genetically modified. I think when I said earlier that this is, a landmark and a milestone in the history of the world, this is what I meant as well. Because, a lot of people will sleep much easier knowing that they bought a product that actually has benefited some individual in a rural setting rather than a large multi-corporation.
Yeah, I know I will. I mean, if I were to know that I'm buying something and it's helping our women, if I'm empowering them, if I'm giving them access to a better livelihood, then of course, what's better than that?
So to get back to what you said earlier about not knowing about it, we're in the process of creating a documentary, documenting, what these women and how these women's lives have changed. And I was very fortunate, and I'd like to relate a small little story to you. How it's changed women. So how empowering women really works. So one day I was sitting here after 2 years of doing this with the women, and I get a call on my phone, and I look down at my mobile, and it's an unknown number. So I pick it up, and there's a man on the other end of the phone. And he says, "Oh, I'm Shazia's husband." Shazia was one of the women who worked for me. So I said, "Yes, how can I help you?" He said, "You see, the thing is, Shazia has thrown me out of the house." So I said, "She's thrown you out of the house? Why did she throw you out of the house?" He said, because when she was not, kind of wealthy and she didn't have access to money, she would put up with a lot of my nonsense. But now she's not willing to do that. And the children have ganged up against me as well. So I'm now been removed from the house because, my wife doesn't take any shit from me. So I said, "Why are you calling me?" He said, "I want you to tell her to take me back." So I said, "Look," I said, I was very amused by this. And I started laughing, and I said, "Okay, I understand the story." So I said, okay, let me see what I can do. So I put the phone down, and literally 3 minutes later, Sharjah calls me. And she said, I believe my husband called you. So I said, yes. She said, she started laughing as well. She said, this is just a threat, because for years of being, in a very docile state, because I'm financially empowered, me and the children can actually take a stand. And now we have him at our mercy. And she said, I want to tell you something else, Rizwan sahab. She said, because of me, she said, 3 other women in my gully have done the same thing. So for me,
Wow.
that is real empowerment. That is when you actually make people responsible for their own futures. And there was a lot of speculation when we did an initial study on how rural communities work and how women are going to spend this money. And everybody kind of assumed, and I'm talking about international donor agencies as well, who turned around and said that, they're going to spend this money on televisions and washing machines and, refrigerators. But, surprisingly, the statistics were completely contrary. Every woman who made money through working with our enterprise educated their daughters. And every
Wow.
one of them said, I am not going to put my daughter through what I've done. So it's almost like a payback, and it's about like paying it forward. So, this has been so encouraging for people like me. It's been so, it's been so huge in transforming my own life on how I see people and connecting me to the grassroots of this country. Because, Pakistan has given me so much. And recently, I can say this with great pride, I was given the Tamga Imtiaz by the government of Pakistan for my work in rural development.
Oh my God, congratulations. I mean,
Thank
Rizwan,
you.
this should be all over the news. I don't know why, you're being so like quiet and humble about it. And also, like what you said about this woman, Shazia, not only are you empowering the current generation, but the next generation as well, because now they're educating their daughters. So, I mean, you're transforming their lives and generations to come. So that's amazing.
Well, the thing is, we're trying. And like I said, I would rather do it than talk about it. I think a lot of people do a lot more talk than actual action. But we're going to put together a documentary that documents this. And also, these women that worked with me for Bahawalpur, we get a lot of support. And I have to thank Sheikha Jawahir Al Qasmi, the ruler of Sharjah, the Sheikha of Sharjah, the ruler's wife. She's been instrumental. She's been amazing. There's a whole bunch of women who actually run an umbrella company over there called Nama. And in particular, there are a couple of people that I have to thank on this forum as well. One of them is Iram Alvi, who is one of the special, assistants to Her Highness. And of course, Rim Bil Karam, who heads the whole program. And Hind Al Qasmi. These are people who have supported us, who have helped our women. And I have to also kind of inform your audience and you as well that 2 years ago, we actually signed a project where my women from Bahawalpur traveled to UAE and trained the UAE women on embroidery techniques. And these are women who had never been to Multan. They had never been outside their villages. For them to get onto a bus, to get onto a plane, to fly to a place like Dubai and to go to Sharjah, to live in these big hotels, it was an amazing life transforming experience for them as well. So I'm so proud of these girls because, the kind of backgrounds that they come to, there is a lot of parda in southern Punjab, a lot of support from their parents they've got. And there are so many little stories, we're going to run out of time, but there are so many little stories that have emerged from this whole endeavor that have galvanized all of us here at Rizwan Beyg, the whole team, all my assistants, all my, the people that work in administration, and has brought a smile to all our faces, and it made it so worthwhile.
Yeah, Rizwan, I see this honesty in what you're saying as well, and I see this passion for these women. And, just the way you're saying it, obviously all these stories, you've made me a happier person right now as well. So, this is just amazing, great work.
Thank you so much. And, thank you for getting me onto this forum so we can talk about these things. And again, quite honestly, we are hoping, and this can only happen with the support of, your country and your people and our consumers. We have a lot of women now that come to us wanting to be employed by the Rizwan Beyg label. But because we cannot employ everybody and anybody, simply because of, economics and logistics, we would strongly kind of advise or recommend that, the people, if you feel for these causes, not to give us charity. We don't want charity. We don't want any kind of charity from people. We want people to buy the product, invest in something which they enjoy, which gives them satisfaction, which is of a quality and a standard of the, worthy of the Rizwan Beyg label. But they are contributing, the kind of contribution that comes through economics and through purchase and through consumerism and through a social enterprise. So I would very much like to kind of tell all your fans and my fans that that's the best way that we can start employing more women, get more products out into the market, and continue to do the good work at a much larger scale than we are right now. Because right now, वो कहते हैं ना समंदर में खतरे बराबर है.
Yeah. But I'll tell you something, Rizwan, and I'll be very honest over here. I see a lot of designers going out there and they say, oh, we're employing these women, and we're paying them. And when you actually speak to these women, they're paying them peanuts, and that sometimes lifts your trust of these things where people go and say, we're employing women from rural areas. So that's why I feel like it's so important to come out with this documentary as well and also speak about it. So people find out that you're actually empowering them and not just giving them 100 rupees or something.
Yeah, so the thing is, if you're going to give them what they're going to get in the marketplace, because that's what people are paying them, and the exploitation that continues, they're not going to work for people like me, quite honestly. The only incentive for them to work for a design house or for a designer is if they get paid substantially much more than they're making right now, right? So for us to actually kind of make these kind of statements has no value, because otherwise they would work for the local market if they were getting paid the same amount of money. Secondly, of course, the kind of documentation that we've done in the form of videos, in the form of everything, is all up on our website. Us actually sitting in UAE and working with them. And also, the documentary, when it comes out, will actually prove, because it's conversations with these women talking about how their lives have changed. So
yeah.
I'm not professing to be some great philanthropist. And like I said, we're not looking at this as some kind of philanthropy. What we are saying that this is actually social enterprise. So we are paying them for what they do, valued at what they value it at, and paying them what they want us to pay them at. And based on that, we are continuing to do what we are doing. And also, you have to realize it took us 2 years to train them to get to this position. So there was a lot of trial and error and expense on our part, which was not spared, because we wanted to be able to actually do this with all honesty. And there is a lot of transparency in what we do, because do you honestly think that the government of Sharjah is going to kind of invest without making any kind of, finding out what the investigation in what the NGO is all about? Because that's the first thing any NGO does.
Which is why I brought up this question, so you could explain all of these things to us and tell us, because there are a lot of people out there, I don't want to name anyone, but they claim that they're empowering women and whatnot, and that is not the case,
No, I'm sure they are empowering women. I mean, I don't want to kind of cast shade onto anybody. I honestly think they probably are empowering women, but not at the level at which we are doing it at, because we are only working with village women. For the past 3 years, our karkhanas in Karachi have been shut down completely. We have just a sampling unit of 6 to 8 people that present a sample where I sit with them and work on the sample. Then everything that we do, from an intricate Marori bridal to a chicken curry kurta, is all done by these women, because the level of expertise is astounding. I mean, it's really astounding.
So you don't have any karkhana over here apart from the 6-7 people. That's so interesting again.
Well, we run a sampling unit. I have a whole factory where we have tailors and master cutters and drapers and designers and all of that. But the actual karkhana we shut down 3 years ago, and everything was moved into the rural sector. So in as much as the actual production of a garment and the actual embroidery, we only sampled in Karachi. Everything is produced by these women. And I would strongly recommend, if you can come to Karachi, if you're ever here, you should come to the store and see the quality of embroidery that we do. Also, you'll find a lot of it on our website.
Yeah. So Rizwan, just to tell our audience again, where exactly is your store? I mean, well, actually, I would not tell anyone to go to the store right now, but once this is over, for the meanwhile, you can check it out on Studio by TCS or Rizwan Beyg's website. Studio by TCS will deliver anywhere in the world. And I think Rizwan Beyg's website, you can find out all the initiatives about their social enterprise. and about empowering women. Rizwan, just moving on from this, I just want to read some comments. Jhangi is saying that he loves your look, uh, and he's a makeup artist, and he wishes to
Thank
work
you.
with you today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Rizwan, everyone before, and I've been actually haven't asked you this question because I was like, I want to keep it for later, but I think I should now because a lot of people are messaging and saying, "What about the Lady Diana story?" So yeah, um, I mean, Kate and Prince William came and visited us a couple of months ago, and oh my God, it was crazy. And everyone was so happy just following them around. And you actually got a chance not to just make an outfit for Lady Diana, but also meet her. I mean, Masha, that's so lucky. Can you tell me a little bit about that and that
Well,
experience?
it's been 20 years now, so it's a long time, and it's kind of a story that's gone around enough times. It's been on television, it's been in magazines, it's been in books on how I met her, and how the whole story transpired. But I mean, to cut it short, I was approached by Jemima Khan, who I was married to Imran Khan then, our present Prime Minister, and she's kind of distantly related to Diana. So Jemima and I were kind of, in contact constantly, and she's a great fan of mine. Great, we used to meet up, and I went to Islamabad, we used to chat a lot. And of course, then she texted me one day and said, I want to make a gift for a friend of mine who's visiting. And this is the point at which, the Shaukat Khanum Hospital was going to was actually going to start up. And she was coming for the opening. I had a suspicion it was Diana because, it was in the press and newspapers said that Diana is going to make a gift. And to put two and two together, Jemima, Diana, makes sense. So I assumed it was going to be for Diana. And so I thought long and hard, and I thought that, there's no point in making her a dress because the West does it much better. And, she'd worn all the Dior's and all the Chanel's and all the dresses. So, and she was very experimental, unlike, Kate and unlike, Meghan Markle. She was much more experimental because when she went to Africa, she wore a sarong. When she went to Japan, she wore a Japanese short jacket kimono and stuff like that. So I thought, what could I make for her that was universal and would be strongly Pakistani? So I did it in Achkar. It was basically a man's, sherwani, but it was a feminized version. It was a softer, more fluid shape. And I'd gone through a lot of her stuff, and she had this, great affection for pearls, and she had this thing for off-whites. And so it was all in shades of white. We used 5 shades of white, and we embellished it with pearls, and it made this heavily embroidered in silk thread. So it was in resham, and it was in Achkar. And I decided to put her into a shalwar. So it was actually the most Pakistani thing that she'd ever worn. And fortunately, it's still there in Althorpe where she's buried, in a little small museum. It's there with my name on it. The whole outfit is there. And it actually went down in Hello Magazine and in a couple of other major international periodicals as one of the 20 best outfits that she ever wore.
Wow. Rizwan, I've seen that outfit, I mean, only in pictures, but it's an outfit that is timeless. Like, even if you were to wear it today, after 20 years, it still seems to be such a classic. And I think that is really what your clothes are all about. They're very classic. They're timeless.
Okay, so when you look at the history of fashion and you look at all the great design houses, the Chanel jacket can be made in, transparent plastic, but it's still the Chanel jacket,
Yeah.
So I think the whole thing about longevity and surviving and becoming a great label is actually understanding that classic is forever. Trends will come and go. Trends, in my view, are more for high street brands. High street brands should follow trends. But when you're spending so much money, it has to be classic. And also, we don't really, I personally, as a designer, don't subscribe to trends alone. I think classics, have withstood the test of time. A sari can be worn anytime. It's a classic. A long coat is a classic. A jacket is a classic. A lehenga is a classic. These are things. A shawl is a classic. So these classic clothes have actually proved that they can last forever. And if I've seen people wear vintage, this is my grandmother's shawl. This is my nani's sari. So this continuity is what actually keeps me so interested in what I do and so grounded, because at the end of the day, when you look at what and I'm not talking about Karachi or Islamabad, what does the average Pakistani woman wear? She wears a kurta, she wears a kameez, she wears a shalwar, she'll carry a dupatta. That is the average person. And I want to design clothes for average women. I do a lot of celebrities out of default. I do a lot of
Yeah.
people, I do a lot of stars, I dress everybody. For them, we can then indulge in something special and a one-off and do bespoke. But I think for the average Pakistani, for some women, hiding their body is more important. Exposure is not everything. And I think, for me, that is important that we actually produce something that every woman of any shape and size can wear.
Yeah. So, Rizwan, tell me, someone was asking you earlier as well, what inspires you? Where do you draw inspiration from?
I think my inspiration is actually, first of all, Pakistan, because I think we are, culturally so rich. We have so much, and provincially, and then of course, around us. I mean, if you look at Central Asia, you look at Afghanistan, you look at Iran, um, we have such a lot of culture, unlike the West. And for many, many years, I have, kind of refused to look westwards. For me, making the perfect gown is not important. I'm not interested in ball gowns. I'm not interested in mini skirts. I'm not interested in the little back dress. For me to actually work with my country and to actually create what is Pakistani and to show how we're individual, how we are so culturally rich is very, very important. Which is why embroidery features so heavily in my work, because the craft of what we do, the West cannot afford to do it. And if they do it, they work in old ateliers that are worked with women in their 80s who used to work for people like Chanel. And which is why a ball gown, which is hand embroidered, is unaffordable in the West. But we can still afford to do it here in Pakistan. And we still have access to hand embroidered embroideries. And we should be celebrating that. We should actually be going out and investing in the kind of clothes that the West cannot afford to invest in.
Absolutely, and I also think that we should do what we're best at. Why try to go and look at those other, like, little back dress or mini skirts that you were talking about. We're better at karhai and we're better at embroidery and all of those things. So we should incorporate that into our thing, into our.
But I think that's where your brand philosophy actually comes about. I mean, you look at brands like Khadi. I mean, it's catering to expat Pakistanis, it's catering to the local market, and it's making a basic Pakistani outfit,
Yeah.
And I think that, and whether we like it or not, the shalwar kameez rules supreme. I mean, the height of modernization is when a woman abandons a shalwar for a trouser. I mean, that's as far as somebody in Sargodha or Sialkot will go. But at the end of the day, it's the kameez and it's the kurta.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Rizwan, tell me right now, like, I see a lot of like white in your clothes as well. Is that one of your favorite colors, or do you love working with white, or am I just making assumptions over here?
No, actually, you're not wrong, because within the fashion community, everybody says that Rizwan does a lot of white and does it best. And a lot of people refer to me. My friend Deepak Parwani refers to me as Rizwan Beyg. So. So it's something that I'm happiest working with white. I think white is extremely versatile, and it's the color for me of the subcontinent. The white dupatta, the white dhoti, the white kurta, the white shalwar, the white chicken ki sari. It's representative of the subcontinent. It's the strongest, symbol of the subcontinent for me. White, the white pagdi, the white shalwar, the white matte ki chadar. These are things that are very Pakistani to me. So I'm very happy working with white.
Rizwan, I have to be honest, I'm taking your interview right now, and I've learned so much, about Pakistan, about you, about what you're doing with women, about the women in Punjab. So I've actually learned so much tonight. So thank you,
No, it was my pleasure, and it was wonderful talking to you. And I hope we can have other conversations on other topics at some other time.
Absolutely. If you'd like to say anything to our viewers, if you just, I just want to say, I want to ask another thing that, fashion industry, obviously, retail, will obviously it's gotten affected a lot by COVID, right? What do you see in the next few months as well? Like, where do you see it going? Are we looking at virtual online fashion shows? I mean, there's talk about a virtual fashion online show. London Fashion Week is going online as well. So is that what is going to happen now?
I mean, technology is actually eventually is going to take over. We all know that. It's just a question of time. But I think even if, with technology, it has to be done right. I think it has to, do it with style. It has to do it with grace. It has to be done respectfully. It has to be done within certain parameters. I don't think it can be a free for all. I don't think it should be done, at the expense of anybody. Yes, I think retail is going to be affected. But if you go by what happened in China, there was revenge buying. I mean, the sales at the Dior store were like ridiculous. I think
I
at the
heard
end
of
of the day, I don't think human nature is going to change. I think people will always want beautiful things. I think people will always want to look good. I think women will always want to look pretty. I think it's something that's engraved in us as human beings. I think people want good things in life. I think they want good things for their children. I think people want the best for whatever they can provide for their families. But I think what's going to happen, the way I think is going to change is I think it's going to start becoming, is this valuable? What I buy, is it going to have a value? So I think people are going to buy less, but I think they're going to pay more attention to what they buy. Where does it come from? Okay, so it's made by village women. Okay, so it's beautifully cut. It's beautifully stitched. Okay, so this I can afford. Instead of buying 6 lawn joras, I will buy this one jora. And I will wear this much more times than I would those 6 lawn joras. So I think people are going to start being very careful as to, and I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing when people actually start looking at where their garment comes from. It's like food, like I mentioned earlier. You have to know what you're putting into your body. In the same way with clothing, you have to know what you're putting on your body. Where does it come from? How does it benefit, the people who have made this? Is it just going to be, corporations who are going to benefit, or is it going to be individuals who are going to benefit? So yes, I think there is going to be a large swath of the population that is going to change the way it looks at stuff. The rich we know this, the rich are always going to have money. It's the people the middle classes and the poorer people who are going to be much more, kind of discerning about what they buy. So hopefully we're going to survive this as well. I mean, there's talk about a vaccine by the end of summer. September, October, they're talking. Perhaps, this is something that, I don't know if I want to say that, but, perhaps once you find a vaccine, everything will go back to the way it was. You never know. So, only time will tell.
Only time. And you know what? Even if it doesn't, at least we're living, at least we have a roof over our head. We have the ability to still, go out. We have so much to be grateful for. So I don't think this is, people should think of this as the end in any way. Life changes. Human beings have such a great ability to adapt. So don't sell yourself short. We will adapt to this. We will get used to the new normal as well, even if things don't go back to the normal we were used to.
Well, I think it's exactly what you just said. I mean, it comes down to the individual, because some people's lives are going to be impacted by this, and some people's lives are not going to be impacted by this. They will continue to live the way they've always lived, and it actually comes down to every individual. And I mean, if you're not going to be aware of the changes that nature has brought about, how the ozone layer is healing, how smog is completely reducing, how the world that we inhabit, which is a beautiful place, how it's healing itself because human beings for once are not being viral and are not taking over the world. So just by staying home and by being inert and by being confined to our homes, the world is healing, nature is healing. And I think that is the strongest message that Mother Nature can give any of us. And I hope, meri dua hai ye, and I pray that all of us who survive this, who continue to do this, live our lives with a lot more responsibility than we have in the past.
Absolutely. Rizwan, thank you so much. I must say, when this lockdown is over, please let's have coffee, because I'd love to listen to all your stories more, and let's have more live sessions as well. It was so nice talking to you, and I think Naila before said that she could just keep listening to you for a very long time, and I agree with her. I think your stories are fascinating, and there's so much more, but Instagram live session actually ends in an hour automatically, so I'm on a bit of a time crunch now. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much, for having me, and for most importantly, like I've always said all my life, it's never the answers, it's the questions that really matter. And I want to thank you for asking me the right questions, because I think the right questions make for an interesting interview. And definitely we must meet up. And if you're in Karachi, you must come and see us at the store. And I would very proudly like to show you what my girls are doing from the southern Punjab region. And thank you very much. And you've been wonderful. And I'm most delighted to be on your show.
Thank you so much, Rizwan. Thank you.
Take care. All the best.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So, viewers, that was Rizwan Beyg, who we just had an amazing live session with. Hearing his stories has inspired me. He works with women in southern Punjab, and if you buy his outfits, that's actually empowering women in southern Punjab. Now, isn't that a great feeling? You can buy and feel good as well, that you're changing people's lives. So you can check out Rizwan Beyg on our website at www.studiobybts.com. I had a great time tonight. Really, I did. I'm smiling cheek to cheek because stories like this, when designers come on and talk about what they're doing in terms of social responsibility and in terms of initiatives they're taking to help other people as well, to help people in need, it just makes me like smile and it makes me feel so good. So I'm really proud that we have Rizwan Beyg not only on our platform, but we have a person like Rizwan Beyg helping people in Pakistan. So आप लोग फिर सब अपना ख्याल रखिएगा, social distancing maintain करिएगा. We will meet again tomorrow. If you have any questions, please feel free to message us, and if we can help you out in any way, please let us know. That's it.